This week on a special edition of the Line Opinion Panel, a group of African-American community leaders delves into the unfinished business of race. The impact of the Trayvon Martin case has reverberated around the country, and it has revealed there are still gulfs of misunderstanding among our different communities in this country. Last month, a verdict was delivered in the case of Trayvon Martin, an unarmed 17-year-old African-American male who, as you know, was fatally shot by George Zimmerman, who was a neighborhood watch volunteer. The Florida jury found Mr. Zimmerman not guilty of second-degree murder and manslaughter. Now, this case has sparked debate over racial profiling, amongst other things, and the verdict set off protest marches nationwide and here in Albuquerque as well. We wanted to talk about the serious issues raised by this case and what they mean for us here in New Mexico and Albuquerque. So joining us today is Dr. Harold Bailey, president of the Albuquerque chapter of the NAACP. Also here, we're very pleased to invite Catherine McGill, founder of the New Mexico Black History Month Organizing Committee. On the other side of the table, Shauna Brown, chair of the 2014 Black History Month Organizing Committee, joins us as well. And we have our good friend Hakeem Bellamy, Albuquerque's first poet laureate. Dr. Bailey, I want to start with you. Not necessarily about the Trayvon Martin case in its entirety, but I want to bring this just a little closer to home. We just had a recent situation that is very telling about UNM and the safety of students and faculty actually on campus, people of color, and there's been some issues. You had to work out some stuff with Dr. Frank. Tell us about the background of that situation. Let's bring it up to the present with your last meeting with Dr. Frank.
Well, there were several incidents that we can classify as being hate crimes oriented, directed towards African American students, faculty, and staff. So after the fifth or sixth incident, we felt that it was necessary for us to hold a conversation with President Frank. And I must say that the conversations, they were very positive. We established positive lines of communication, and we look forward to working with him. What's
your sense about this moving forward? You mentioned there were multiple incidents and nothing really got going to help in this situation for quite a while. Do you feel like there are things in place now where students and faculty can feel safer on campus starting today or tonight?
I think that President Frank, let's just give him an opportunity to implement some of the initiatives that he supports. Okay. So the NAACP is just waiting for things to be implemented. But I think safety is a concern of everyone. We just want to make sure that's a true reality.
There you go. Kathy, National African American History Month, Black History Month.
Yes.
Big deal here in New Mexico, given our place here, place being in a positive sense of the word, our contribution, our many things that we have done here in our state to get people to where we are today. Talk about what your goals are for Black History Month, what you want to get across, and what you want folks to come away with our contribution here.
Well, I think that what we are doing is what Carter G. Woodson did back in 1926 when he inaugurated Negro Achievement Week, as what it was called then, changed to Black History Month in the 70s and expanded to a month. What we are doing is sort of going back to the mission to say that we want to increase the awareness of the contributions of African Americans, especially in a state like New Mexico where we have traditionally been marginalized in this state that has been described as tricultural. So we wanted to make sure that everyone understands that all of us have a role to play in the quality of life in New Mexico. And what we're really doing is promoting multiculturalism by saying, look at the richness that we bring to the tapestry of this great state. So the New Mexico Black History Month Organizing Committee is an opportunity for us to bring together the organizations that are doing work within the African American community to coalesce, to leverage our resources, and to let people know about the great work we're doing. Because we often hear, well, you know, I couldn't find any Black person to comment on that, or we didn't know what you were doing. So if you didn't know, now you know.
There you go. Has the Trayvon Martin case affected your planning or anything else about Black History Month? Is there a new sense of urgency, or is there something that has ignited something here?
Well, I think that you know, what we want to make sure that everyone understands is that we know that African American history is American history, that we're a part of what goes on. So has it affected us? No. I think it's given us a greater desire to make sure that we do affect that understanding so that we can prevent another Trayvon Martin case from happening, because you know, it's not isolated. It certainly happens all the time, and it's unnecessary. And I think that when we know more about each other, then we're not afraid of a young black man walking down the street, going home.
There you go. Shauna as chair this year for 2014 coming up. Interestingly, if Kathy mentioned it, I'm glad she did, the other organizations that the committee works with. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that surprises most folks of how many African American organizations are right here in Albuquerque. It's a shock to a lot of people when I talk to folks.
Yeah.
Go ahead and talk to that a little bit.
There are a lot, from fraternities and sororities to state level organizations as well, that are all involved in the planning process and the implementation of every event that we have.
Right.
So it's very much a collaboration. I mean, we're only kind of leading the way as far as what takes place, but it's real input from anyone who wants to join the table to showcase what they want to bring or what they want us to experience. They have the ability to do so. So it's been, I can understand why people will be surprised, but it's here and it happens, and it can happen in a very organized and collaborative way.
I'm reading about some African American history in New Mexico right now through a very interesting book, and a lot of the organizations that we take for granted today, NAACP and others, started here quite a long time ago. People would be quite shocked at about 1914 for the NAACP here, Doc. It's an amazing thing. But for younger people, and especially for younger brothers and sisters that are moving into Albuquerque, are you finding that this is a way for them to connect to the community by having this committee and having this event and getting a fuller, richer community going in that sense as well?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Out of the Black History Month organizing committee came Young Blacks of Albuquerque, which myself and Alicia Kidd co-founded, and it's really been an avenue for people who are new to Albuquerque, African Americans who are looking for that sense of community to get involved. And if I don't know if that would have taken place without the organizing committee, without that festival happening.
Yeah.
I meet so many African Americans who are like, I don't know what there is to do. I can't find anyone in our community, and it pleases me to say, well, I know exactly where you can go. I know
Right.
exactly what's out there for you. So
Yeah.
it's been great.
Good for you. Another youngin' right here, Hakeem Bellamy. Congratulations on the Poet Laureate thing, by the way.
Thank you.
Very, very pleased to hear this. For young folks, I'm going to take a guess here on something. I'll be 56 this year, so that's why I can use the word young. Healing. After the Trayvon Martin case, at some point there has to be a point of healing for folks. And as I look out over Facebook and other social media, it seems like younger people are driving that idea of trying to find some kind of healing and understanding and moving forward. Would you agree with that? Is that your sense as well?
Absolutely. I think it's equal parts, right? At the same time, healing and then also trying to not let the conversation go away, because these epicenters that happen, it kind of ebb and wane with the kind of race discussion in our country, and the youngins, like my generation, has had a sometimes sophisticated approach to that, but oftentimes when it's disconnected from history and a lot of organizations and things that you were talking about that exist just here in New Mexico. So without that connection, there's nowhere to go to find that healing externally, right? And so people have been doing it through art. People have been doing it through difficult conversations. People have been doing it, and then people have been doing it in unhealthy ways too. People have been in denial. People have been avoiding it. People have been pretending we're post-racial and things like that, right?
That's right.
And so, so it's interesting, but I think that really piggybacking off of what you were just talking to Sean about, a lot of that comes from a disconnect with the services or resources that exist in the community around them. So we're kind of forced to kind of find a way to cope and heal through other methods.
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
that works out well, and sometimes it don't.
Those difficult conversations are part of that process. I want, Kathy, you're part of that too as well, I realize. But Hakeem, for you, has there been a commonality in frustration that you've heard about from younger folks about what, about moving forward? I have my own frustrations as a 56-year-old man, but it has to be vastly different for someone in their 20s. What are some of the things that you've been hearing commonalities of frustration?
Well, I think there's an interesting dialogue that's kind of started around expectations. And I feel like, and I can't speak for many of my fantastic elders here in the elder generation, but I think that dialogue has been around the elder generation saying, man, we've been at this a long time and things have not gotten much better. And this younger generation also coming in and looking at that and saying, well, this is kind of all we've ever known, and we can't point necessarily to some magnificent movement that we were a part of, and so we're kind of left in this kind of middle of this ocean with like a life preserver thing, and saying, okay, so is it going to get better on its own? Do we have to necessarily be really proactive and do things, which is what I believe.
Sure.
Right. So there's just this interesting conversation about it. Like I guess feudal would be the right word, or even nihilistic sometimes, where it's like, this is how it is and this is how it's always going to be. You know, and I have a 5-year-old son, so I can't say this is how it is and this is how it's always going to be. Like
right.
his life depends on it being better. So
That's right.
I feel engaged, but how do we as a generation really plug into that and not just go from crisis to crisis like I've seen in my 35 years. It's
Exactly.
when a crisis happens, we organize and then it kind of goes away.
Yep.
And like Kathy said, Trayvon is a symbol of things that happen every single day and every single week. So what is it going to take for us to really create some sort of meaningful response?
Sure. And you know, to add to that, this is also, guys, under the idea that, you know, there's a lot of other pressures that are happening for the community right now. When you see what's happening in Congress, when you see what's happening in some states about voting rights, there's a lot of pressure right now, Kathy McGill. And so when you have these conversations with younger people, you're trying to get some things going, get people's mouths to move and
Right.
get to some truths on this.
Right.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think that what we really want is real talk, you know, because whatever you can put in the middle of the table and say, you know, this table is black, and how do we all feel about that? You know, what do we need to do about it if we have some negative feelings about it, or if there have been some issues with the fact that this table is black? What can we do? And I think that what we are trying to do is say that if we are going to prevent future tragedies, that we got to have real, authentic talk. We have to have an intention to have authentic interaction with people that we consider to be other than us, you know, and so we have defined other, you know, and said that you're not like me, so that means that I somehow need to be, you know, wary of you. And I think that what we're all saying is that, you know, that's just not true. You know, it is true that I maybe don't look like you, but there are certain things about our existence that are universal. We breathe the same air, we drink the same water. Our kids, for the most part, go to the same schools, and so why don't we try to figure out a way that we can come together? I think that young people have an opportunity to do a better job than we've done in advancing racial equity. So I think we want to go to them and find out what they're actually thinking, because I think also that as elder, when I say that, I'm thinking, oh my gosh. My friend told me when he told me that I was middle-aged, I said, no, I'm not. And he said, do the math, Kathy. So as I do the math and recognize that I am middle-aged now, you know, and I look back over the years, and I think that I have some historical background to bring to those conversations, but I want to listen to what young people have to say, because they always surprise me about how good they are at solving problems. So I think we need to go back to young people and find out what they think.
That's a very interesting point, Doc Bailey, because it's interesting. Listening to Benjamin, I'm sorry, President of the NAACP, I forgot his last name.
Benjamin
Jealous, sorry. Talk about this very issue on a national scale for NAACP, but I have to imagine those same dynamics Kathy's talking about apply here as well. You've been at this a long time. You've been a warrior for the cause a long time. For young people, how do they fit into this argument as well, in this problem solving?
Well, first of all, they have to understand they have a responsibility, an individual and collective responsibility to do their share. You know, there are a lot of people in history, I don't have to name them all, but you know, they did their part, so we have to make sure that we do our part. And young people, they have technology, they're much smarter.
They are much
and if
smarter,
they can
aren't they?
develop a collective strategy, then we can get further on down the highway. So we have to keep the discussions going. There's a place for elders. I'm the oldest one here. So I'm saying we have a lot of experience and knowledge, so all we have to do is just transfer that knowledge and let them lead.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we want to make sure that when we pass the baton, they're able to lead. So, you know, we just have to stay in our lane and make sure that we do our individual part.
So what are the skill sets a young person needs to be effective as a change maker that are similar to what you went through in the late 60s, 70s, and beyond right here in New Mexico? Is it the same thing at its basic level?
Basically, it's the same thing. You know, one has to have that passion to bring about a positive change for all people. Even though my philosophy comes from a black perspective, I feel that a collective strategy between different groups of people is the best way to go. I mean, I was raised here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and just engaging different groups of people and coming up with a collective strategy, you know, that's the answer right there.
Right.
So young people have to be passionate, you know, they have to have that vision, they have to have that awareness, and they have to have some structure. We have to have order in order to bring about positive change. It's not always good just to bring about change by force. We already know that does not always happen, but throughout history, force has always kind of helped society bring about change. So if we can just balance the two together, I think
Yep.
it'll be all right.
You know, it's interesting, Shauna, to hear Doc talk about this, and this comes up a lot. I'm sure you guys go through this all the time too. Is that there's a certain set of folks that says, "Look, nothing's going to change unless we get out in the street and really make a change. Really get out there and agitate." But that old idea of agitating all the time, Doc. You know, in our time, that was how things got changed. Is that still viable in your view? And again, you can't speak for all young people. I'm not going to make you do that. But, you know, but your personal opinion, is agitation part of the mix? The only answer? None of the answer? How does that fit in for you?
I'd say from just my own experience, not necessarily agitation, but making people a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to make people a little bit uncomfortable because they're not willing to talk about the facts. And race makes people really uncomfortable. They don't like to talk about it. But I want to go back to that collective effort because I've grown up in a time where my schools have always been integrated. I've always been around other kinds of people, other ethnicities, other even socioeconomic. All of that I've seen all at once. So for me, I think it's important to have a lot of people at the table that are working to talk about an issue, even if that issue has to do with something that impacts only the Black community, because if it impacts the Black community, it impacts the community at whole. It impacts everyone.
Right.
So I think you have to make people a little bit uncomfortable with bringing up the fact that these conversations need to happen,
Sure.
and that we have to work together. And just because I don't look like you or you don't look like me, it doesn't mean that we don't have ideas that can solve a problem collectively.
Interesting. Hakeem Bellamy, artists in their role in this, in making folks uncomfortable. That's a classic role of the artist.
My favorite role.
There you go. But here in Albuquerque, I would seem to me fertile territory for making people uncomfortable here, because you've got a set of eyes looking potentially who are unaware completely of lots of things. Do you ever get that sense where you sit down and write something?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I kind of find it fascinating, and I've had the luxury and the pleasure, the opportunity to share this whole inaugural laureateship thing with people in interviews, and one of the interviews was with my hometown paper, the Courier Post, Philadelphia, South Jersey.
Congratulations. Good for
And
you.
they always ask, because it's a typical question you ask poets, what do you write about? And then I kind of paused and I laughed and shook my head, and I was like, I write about race. And and this was a phone conversation, so I couldn't see Kim Mulford was the amazing journalist who interviewed me. She's awesome. But I could tell there was like this, so you write about race and you're the inaugural poet laureate in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The state that has a 2% Black population, and people are receptive to that, because generally in our country, like Shauna said, they're not. People want to pretend it doesn't exist. It's the white elephant in the room. And so, and I said that to me, it's always fascinating that I write about that a lot. I go after it, and I go after it from a place of, that's my experience. Like when I work with my students of all ages, I'm like, you're only the expert on your experience. And that's my experience. I could write about flowers, I could write about bicycles, I could write about all that stuff, but it's still going to be a Black bicycle, a Black flower in my Black world. And it's hard to be beyond that. And so that's why when we talk about colorblindness being sometimes the biggest obstacle to solving this issue, this race problem, as Frederick Douglass calls it, it's because it's not pretending that, we're not different. It's actually embracing that. It's actually putting that out there. And I feel like when I do my art, I can only speak for my art, that I do that in a way that Kathy was talking about, that says, yeah, I'm Black, but I'm a parent.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm Black, but I love. Yeah, I'm Black, but I hurt. And I think that's been a contentious point sometimes in the Trayvon Martin discussion, but also a way to kind of bring people to, what if it was your child? Look at it like that. Instead of looking at it like, all of your fears and everything you bring to the table, what if it was your child? And I think as a poet, to kind of go back to your initial question, what I found most interesting in those conversations that I've had, because I've written lots of poetry about this particular issue, because it's really dear to me, as a young man who used to wear a hoodie and has a son who's going to wear one in 10 years, right? The interesting part about discussion is how people identify. Because you either identify as the kid on the ground, or you identify as, well, I'm a homeowner and this person's in my neighborhood and I have a right to. So it's interesting how people identify, and racially and whatever, if they want to say non-racially. But what I find most interesting is that usually the victim is the person that's dead. And in this case, the victim wasn't the person that was dead. The victim was George Zimmerman. So
Interesting, isn't it, though?
Yeah.
Doc, art and that thing was back in our day, was a big part of our protests as well. For you, do you see again similarities between the things Hakeem and Kathy and Shauna are trying to do and the things that you try to do back when? And is it something that at some point adds up to a whole, and we have some change that we can all look at and say, okay, we did this, we made some things move forward?
Well, the arts, I embrace the arts. That's another form of communications. So, I embrace that. Matter of fact, I have a lot of respect for these two artists, so we always have to find ways that's going to be acceptable to people so they can understand what we're trying to say. A lot of times we say things to people, but they don't understand what we're saying. So if we can find a way for them to understand what we're saying, then we can come up with a strategy that's going to benefit us all. See, that's the key thing. The strategy has to benefit everyone.
Yeah.
It can't just benefit black people, you know what I'm saying, or this particular group over here, and that's what we're doing now. So if we can just come together, whether it be young and old, I mean, we still have some time on the planet, you know what I'm saying, that we need to do some things that we're supposed to be doing just to give respect to history.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I'm coming from.
That's right.
Just, you know, something localized as far as the Trayvon Martin situation is the Jonathan Mitchell incident.
That's right.
Young black veteran who was killed by a non-law enforcement person. This person was from the community, had a permit to carry a gun. But the NAACP's position is that this person shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place in order to kill Mr. Mitchell. So the NAACP is waiting for a determination from the DA's office, and then we'll frame our action based on that.
In that case, you're referencing happened out in the west side of our city, out in Ventana Ranch. So local. When you say local, you mean local. I can't thank you all enough for coming in on this. We wanted to have a good conversation here at New Mexico PBS that was outside of Black History Month, as important as Black History Month is, but sometimes just to change it up a little bit and give some thought to this situation. And the fact that right here, we have 5 African Americans sitting right here who love the state of New Mexico, who love the city of Albuquerque. And that's a message I get frustrated with, that folks sometimes don't think that we love our place here, even despite all the things that we've had to go through. We love this place. It's a great place. We just want it to get better. And through efforts like yours, Kathy, and Shauna, and Doc, and Hakeem, I think it's going to be, for sure. Thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Absolutely. Thanks for spending this hour with us. We like hearing from you as we plan our shows, certainly. Social media is the best way to do that. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for New Mexico in Focus. You can find old shows and bonus interviews on YouTube or on our NewMexicoInFocus.org page. I'm Gene Grant. We'll see you next week in Focus.